Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing wonderful. Welcome to the Early Career Podcast. My name is Priyanka Mahankali, your friend and host. First of all, I just want to say that I am in Toronto right now and it is absolutely freezing here. It's minus somewhere between -8 and -10 degrees Celsius. And literally, it is literally like a freezer outside. I wish I could just kind of turn the camera and show it to you, but then it would ruin all the setup. But let's just use our imagination. So I'm going to be indoors mostly this weekend. It seems like there's something called a polar vortex, which is heading our way. And so I'm just going to be warm inside and just maybe record some more podcast episodes for you guys. But thank you so much for your time. If you're here, I appreciate it because it means that you're a curious person. You are looking to learn. And this podcast is designed for people who are in their early career. It is designed for really everybody, but I want to specifically focus on people who are in their early career, folks who are in their undergrad, masters, trying to get your first job, or maybe you have your first job and you're trying to get your next job, but you're still in that early career between the 25 to the 35 age range. And the reason I want to focus on that is because I had a great head start to my career, and I think it's because of that I feel like I have achieved significant success in my life. So, having that initial, that good launch pad is really important. And that's what drove me to make sure that you also have what I had from when I joined Amazon and started off as a solutions architect there. So today's topic is on feedback. How do we accept feedback? And, it's something that I've thought about for so many years. This is a video that is long overdue in the sense that I've pondered upon what should feedback feel like, and should we take it personally, and if we don't take it personally, then how should we take it, and how can we work on the feedback? And I've come up with some points that I wanted to share today. So let's kind of look at it this way. Let's assume that you are in a situation where you are being given feedback, and let's kind of work our way from the top down, where we start off with someone giving us feedback, whether it's on, maybe at work it's on our performance, maybe that could be a manager usually typically giving performance feedback, or it is someone in a leadership position giving you. This could be someone higher than you or at your level, that's okay. But someone giving you feedback on an idea that you may have, or like an impact, some sort of impact that you should have had but you didn't have on some project or initiative, or just you know uh, feedback maybe that is related to your personal life, or you know your parents or your relationships. There are different kinds of people giving us feedback at different points in our life. And I wanted to address that what I'm going to say and share with you is for everybody, or it's for all kinds of situations, feedback coming from all kinds of people. So when we start off with feedback coming from, when we start off with receiving feedback, right? Let's start from there. Someone gave you feedback and your response is, or your natural body's response is, oh my God, that is not me. Or, we tend to get really defensive, right? Because we have this sense of, human beings, we have this strong sense of identity. So we want to be the best at things. And even more than being the best, we want to show others that we're the best. And if someone tells you that you're not, then you tend to feel, oh my God, like, how can you think that way of me, right? And while that is a very normal human feeling, which is very fine to have, I mean, in fact, if you don't have that feeling, then something's wrong with you. because we're all human beings. We all have a strong sense of identity, and we all want to be, we want to be successful, and we want to be looked upon as that. So when you receive feedback, your body's natural defense mechanism kicks in, and it's actually tied to your survival instincts, and it's actually tied to the a part of your brain called the amygdala, which I always think of every life situation, and I bring it back to the survival instinct and the amygdala, and I think about, okay, so what is my amygdala or my survival instinct trying to tell me, right? And in this situation, my survival instinct is basically protecting me, protecting me from this feedback, because it doesn't want that feedback, right? Because then to your body, it's like it's threatening your survival, right? It's like your urban survival. Just like in the olden times, we ran away from bears and lions, and and the way we knew how to run away from it is based on our survival instinct, right? Similarly, in our urban environments, we run away from things like feedback because it threatens our survival in the workplace. It threatens our survival with our family. It threatens our survival in relationships, or at least we perceive it to be a threat. So now, once you receive that feedback, you can take a moment. I usually take a day to think about it. And first of all, before we even get there, I respond with I respond immediately to that person with some level of curiosity, saying, yeah, oh, interesting. Thank you for that feedback. Oh, I appreciate it. Because you don't want to sound like, oh, this is not that, or that's not this. And in fact, even if you disagree with the feedback, take some time. I always say that sleep on it, because it means your brain you're trying to take a day to think about it and think if the feedback is really valid or not. And then think about how you want to respond. And sometimes it may be that you have such a strong instinct about the fact that that feedback is wrong, or incorrect rather, that then you can let them know that, hey, I thank you for your feedback, but I think that um, that so and so, right? And you don't have to say, don't use words like you. Just say that I don't believe that this is right, because based on what I have done and what I have seen and what I have. So don't make it sound like a blame on the other person. Just make it sound like, just bring it back to you and what you have done and how you perceive something to be, so that the other person doesn't feel again further defensive, because or rather that person doesn't feel like you are being defensive, right? So you want to sound open, but you also don't want to sound like you're blaming the other person for giving you feedback. So that's step number one. Let them know that you receive the feedback, and that you disagree with them, or if you don't disagree or you don't agree, just say, hey, thank you for the feedback, I appreciate it, let me think about it. And let me think about it is, I think, one of the most powerful answers that you can ever give to someone, because it shows that you are curious, you are not defensive, but you also are a mature person, and you're going to think about it in an objective manner. Because only someone who can be objective is going to say, let me think about it. And I always say, yeah, let me think about it. And this is actually another leadership quality as well, as a side note, that great leaders will always do this, will always respond with an open heart, with an open mind, by saying, yeah, thank you for that. I will definitely think about it. And that's a great response. So that's that. Now, before we move on to the next part of the feedback process, also remember that, also keep in mind that, look at who is giving you the feedback. Is it someone that you respect? Is it someone that uh, whose opinion you think has weight? Because I think that, for me, the majority of times, if someone has given me feedback and that person is someone I actually respect, their opinion I respect, and I know that they have my best interest at heart, then, usually I'm not able to take it negatively, even as a first instinct. So because my survival is fundamentally not threatened, because I know that they have my best interest. And this is, again, falls under building that network and building that bond with people enough that when someone gives you feedback, your body is not threatened by it. Your body is in fact empowered by it. You actually feel good that someone's so invested in your career or in your life that they are giving you this feedback, because that's how much they care about you growing. Because think about it, why is someone going to tell you a growth tip or something where you can work on if they are not invested in your success? Again, and I'm referring to only people with good intentions. Fundamentally, if a person has fundamentally bad intentions, then this does not apply. Then of course they're doing it for, kind of seeking control over you or making you afraid. There's also people who can use feedback as a way to make you afraid, but it can only work if you actually get afraid, or you actually change your behavior and you start um, feeling inferior now because of the feedback that you receive. Because I've seen a lot of people, especially if they receive feedback from like a higher leader, um, that is more senior than you, people tend to think that, okay, because this is a person that's higher up than you, therefore their feedback is valid. But no, that's not at all true. Everyone, remember, I always tell this in all of my episodes almost, that everyone is equal. You are just as important as, the CEO of the biggest company in the world, or, the president of the most powerful country. And I'm not saying this because like I'm just trying to like give you some motivational speech. No, I'm saying this as in a very primitive way to say, you're a human being. You have your flaws, you have your good things. So does someone else. Now, of course, the CEO of this big company definitely has maybe more skills, like tangible skills than you. Of course, and that's okay too. But they're not more important than you from a human level. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at these things, that I think, oh, you know what? This person is also a human being. I'm also a human being. We are equals. So I'm not going to, just because someone is in a, senior leadership position, I'm not going to put them on a pedestal and think that their feedback is somehow just automatically right without me actually taking the time to evaluate it. So I always make sure that I evaluate people's feedback. And this is the point that I was coming to is, if you can, if you have the time, then just sleep on it. Like take the day, maybe do something else, and slowly start pondering on that feedback and think, is this actually right? But don't think about it in like a defensive way. Think about it from a really objective way, in a really, really logical way, and think, is this really right? And if it is, then you need to find a way to work on it, which is bringing me to the second part, which is the shift from feeling defensive to growing. So thinking about, what can I learn from this feedback, and how can this make me a better person? How is this uncomfortable truth actually helping me in my growth? Because growth is uncomfortable. No, and again, that's tied to your survival, because human bodies generally, fundamentally, they're adaptive, but they're only adaptive in the context of your survival. So it only adapts if it perceives that it is helping in your survival. If it is not, if some part of your growth is not helping in your survival to your body, then it's going to try to like shoo it away. And in this case, it perceives feedback as not being the change that is helping you, but actually threatening its survival. So then it's going to like try to shoo it away. And that's where the defensive part comes. But so you need to shift the focus from being defensive to being having a growth mindset. And again, this can be hard. So I'm not saying that you're not going to want to cry, or you're not going to feel like the whole world is collapsing on me, or feel like, oh my God, this is just the worst day ever. I mean, I have had my days, and I still do, when people give me feedback sometimes. Not everyone, but some people, when they give me feedback, I'm like, this does not feel like I didn't like this feedback, because sometimes people also don't know how to give feedback in a way that sounds constructive and growth oriented, which is what will be my next episode next Thursday. And this will be dedicated to all feedback providers, because if we don't have good feedback providers having the right skills to provide feedback, then people like you and me will always suffer in some way or the other. No matter how much I give you this speech of how to deal with it, we will always suffer, because as a human being, if you hear feedback in a certain way that is not the right way of giving, then we will automatically feel a little bit, like out of place, or you might just feel a little bit shocked and emotional, and you might feel like you just want to react instantly. And those are not feelings that need to, or those are not feelings that will come up if feedback is given in the right way. So how do you accept feedback with high emotional intelligence? Because these episodes are about having or building high intelligence habits, right? And so how do we accept this feedback? Starting with, I know I mentioned earlier about answering the question with saying, thank you for the question, or thank you for the feedback. I will get back to you on this, right? That's one way to look at it. And realize that someone giving you feedback is not about you. The feedback is not about you as a person. It's just about some work that you did, or the role you play in someone's life, in a relationship, or um, in a parent-child relationship, or at work. It's just a role you're playing, right? You are a sister, you are a colleague, you are a friend, you are a daughter, son, whatever, right? These are all roles you are playing in different people's lives. But this is, I mean, whatever happens there is not who, sorry, is not who you are. So when you are receiving feedback, that feedback should not affect the core of who you are as a human being. You remember I talked about you being a human being and you being an equal to someone else. And fundamentally, when you receive feedback, you tend to think you start to think you are less, or you are inferior than the person that gave you the feedback. I don't want you to think that. I want you to think that you are just as important and just as equal to someone else from a human level. So now what you can also do is, additionally, if you didn't understand the feedback, or sometimes you just want more clarification on the feedback, that is not defensive. You can totally ask them, hey, can you share a little bit more about why you said this, or um, why do you think that this is the case, and things like that, right? And the other person might give you a response, which is fine. One is, it helps you work on it, but two, it also helps the other person really think about why they thought this way of you, to then give you this kind of feedback, right? So, you know, asking someone else asking a follow-up question to the person is not at all wrong. You can totally do that, and it does not come across as defensive. In fact, it comes across as someone who is mature, is someone who's curious and trying to really understand and learn. So don't say, oh, tell me why you said this, right? You want to say something like, oh, that's interesting. Can you actually share more? If you don't mind, can you share more about this? So now that you have accepted the feedback, um, you got the feedback, you took the time to think about it, you responded either at that time, or you responded after thinking about it, and you found that there are opportunities for growth. And, the other thing I also want to mention as part of this is, sometimes people, especially in this, current generation, and so with social media, so many people are incentivizing everyone to, especially on social media, to kind of not look at feedback, not look at what people are telling you, and just kind of believe in yourself. That's the term. Believe in yourself. I'm already the best, so I don't need the feedback. I don't fully agree with that because I think that there is always something hidden. I've always found something hidden in feedback, even if the person that gave me the feedback or that the feedback itself wasn't actually great or right, somewhere or the other, I would be like, maybe I wasn't actually able to accept that feedback in that point in time, but maybe it was relevant in a different point in time. So I always consider feedback to be gold, even if it is wrong, you know? And that actually also trains your brain to be less defensive when you receive feedback, because now you're actually looking for it. You're like, okay, yeah, I am using this as a way to grow and be a better person, which means now you're telling your brain not to be afraid of the feedback. And so actually, and I will cover this in a episode specifically focused on mentorship. But in my sessions where I speak with my mentors, I specifically ask for feedback like, hey, can you tell me if I'm doing something wrong, or can you give me some tips or advice? I always ask people that. I'm sure my mentors can vouch for this, but because that's how confident I am, that I actually ask for feedback like 99% of the times. And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I don't think there's anything. And I nudge them and say, no, you have to say something. So then now my brain is always looking for feedback, which, I mean, there are some negative aspects to that when you're always looking for feedback, sometimes it can stop you or inhibit you from kind of going forward a little bit, which, I'll cover in a later episode. But in your 20s, for sure, 100% ask for feedback from anybody you meet, from even someone who doesn't know you. You can ask them, hey, what did you think? What was your first impression of me when you met me just today? I've even asked that question to people. Like, I'll meet a stranger at a conference, we'll chat, and I'll be like, hey, I'm curious. Can you just tell me what you thought of me when I first approached you 10 minutes back? That's great because that gives me an understanding of what I come across like as a person. So it's not even that you have to ask for feedback only from people who are, who have spent a lot of time with you, who know you really well. It could also be a stranger. And that helps a lot in a different way. So again, now that we have covered all of this, remember that again, in the end, the whole point is that feedback is important. It's not something we want, but it's something we need. And it is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to feel like you don't want it. It is going to potentially ruin your day. That's okay too. Let it ruin your day. I mean, I've had days where I'll be literally opening a can of beer or having a glass of whiskey because I got some bad feedback, and I'd call my friend or I'd call my one of my previous managers who is like my friend. So I would call him and be like, you know what, today this happened, and it really sucks. And then he would also be like, yeah, that really sucks. And, he'd kind of talk me through it. Some amount of venting out is good, because recently I heard there was some psychology based review or something that said, venting out, or someone or some post I read that venting out is not good for your brain because it basically helps reinforce a problem even more. And while I generally agree with that you shouldn't vent out too much, like you shouldn't talk about the same thing over and over again for months at a time, because then your brain is actually never moving on from it. I do think that some amount of venting is good, because, like, if I have a problem, I'll talk about it once, and then I get some perspective, we have some laughs, we, share some conversation as friends, and then I'm done with it. Then I move on from it. But if I keep venting out over and over again, I think that's when the problem arises. So yeah, minor venting sessions are okay. And with that, the very last step is to circle back to the person that gave you feedback, not like in a day or two, But, take a, considerable amount of time, like maybe a week or 2 weeks or a month, depending on again, this is very subjective, depending on the kind of feedback. If it is feedback from my mentors, I actually reach out to them like in 3 months or something, 1 to 3 months. And I tell them that, hey, you know what, by the way, and they're not even expecting that I circle back on their feedback, but I do that still. So I let them know that, hey, by the way, you told me about this, you advised me on this couple of months back, and I just wanted to give you an update on that I did work on it, and then this was the outcome, and this how it helped me. So thank you for the feedback. So I actually thank the person for the feedback. One, because it helped me grow, and two, because I want them to give me more feedback. So I'm letting them know that that is something I like. Because think about it, sometimes people don't want to give you feedback because they feel like they might be hurting you. And like if a person is a genuinely good person, that's what they're going to think. They might feel a little bit hesitant if it's feedback that's not very pleasant. So they don't want to hurt you. But if you ask for it, right, then the other person is going to feel less like that, and they're going to feel more inclined to give you the feedback, which is actually helping you, right? Not them. They're not getting anything out of it. So circling back can also be a very good way to also tell your brain not to be intimidated by feedback. And it's kind of like you're subconsciously rewiring your brain to like feedback more and more. And in fact, over the 8 years that I worked at Amazon, I've come to this point where if I don't get feedback, I feel like something's missing. I want the feedback. So I'm always asking my managers, I'm asking my teammates, I'm asking my friends, my colleagues uh, that I work with, or my parents even, um, my sister. So I always ask people for feedback so that I feel like I'm looking at all corners before I do something, right? Because sometimes we can't see some things that other people can see because they're looking at it from a different perspective, from an external lens, from their own worldly perspective that we can never see because we're not them, right? And they're not us either. So another area that I did want to quickly touch on is sometimes feedback, when it's given to you, right? Let's say that you're writing a document or you're sharing a proposal, like a business proposal, and you are asking for feedback. You have like a feedback reviewer list for this document that you're writing, and you circulate that document, which is like a think big idea, right? And everyone's giving you feedback. And sometimes for very, very big ideas, right, you need multiple rounds, like 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 rounds of feedback, believe it or not. And there was this one idea, I wanted to share my personal experience on this. There was this one idea that I was working on that was really big. And so I would constantly ask people for feedback and kind of create these document review sessions or meetings. Every meeting, people would give me probably collectively about 3 to 4 people would give me maybe like 25 comments total, which is fine. And that's also, that's a very Amazonian thing to do, which is give feedback, give lots of feedback. And that's also how you develop some thick skin where you don't feel too attached to the feedback. And this is coming back to the part that I mentioned initially, which is that feedback is not about you. That feedback is about your work. It's not about you. It's about your ideas. It's about your thoughts. It's about your visions, but it's not about you. So it doesn't make you less. Anyway, so then I, would continue to share. I would um, take that feedback, make changes in the document, and then continue to share that feedback, or continue to share that document for another feedback round, sometimes with the same people, sometimes with different people. Okay. So I kept sharing it and sharing it and sharing it. And I think I shared it with about 100 people at the very least for feedback. And so what happened is the feedback kind of went back and forth. For example, one person said, okay, this paragraph is not required. This is too much information. So I would remove the paragraph. Then, and I'm oversimplifying this example just for purposes of this, of you being able to understand what I'm trying to say. But, someone would say, remove this paragraph, then I would remove it. Then the next feedback round, another person would say, oh, I think there's very little information here. You need to add more. And I had added more, which was that previous paragraph that I removed. So I would bring that paragraph back. And then someone would again say in another feedback round that, okay, in this paragraph, these details are not great. So you see what I'm saying? The feedback kind of kept going in loops where, some people, it's almost like the people giving the feedback were disagreeing with each other through this document review. So I started getting very confused. I was like, I don't know whether I should take this feedback or I should not. And the mistake I was doing there was that I was taking everyone's feedback and I was implementing everyone's feedback. So I went to my mentor and I asked them, hey, what do I do? Because I'm receiving this and that. Then you know what they said? And this is a lesson I will never ever forget. They said, Priyanka, you need to figure out what feedback is relevant, what feedback is useful, what feedback is something that you think is right, that you want to incorporate. So in the end, the feedback, people will give you all kinds of feedback, but you need to figure out what you want to incorporate into your document. Because in my head, what I was trying to do was I was trying to incorporate everyone's feedback to make them feel like, to make them feel valued. I wanted to make the feedback providers feel valued and their opinions to feel valued, which is natural. And if you are a, good person, you are going to feel like, yes, I want to make the other person feel valued. And that's what I did. But then I realized that I think I was doing injustice to my idea, to the document, to the proposal that I had, by just taking everyone's feedback without any sense or without any sort of filter. And the filter had to be me because this was my idea. So then I started looking at the feedback from a very, very different lens. I started reading the feedback, and this time around, if I didn't agree with the feedback, I would just leave it. And if I did agree with the feedback, I would implement it. And you know what? This was actually a great way for me to not take the feedback personally as well, because when I used to initially get feedback, because I'm implementing everyone's feedback, it would also make me take feedback personally, and it would make me, you know, question my idea itself, because sometimes some feedback people would say, oh, this idea is, I don't think it's going to go very far, or something like, not exactly that sentence, but something on those lines where they don't believe in the idea. And some people would say, oh, this is a great idea, this has great potential. So I would be like, I don't know which one to go with. And if you tap into your insecurities at that point, you are going to go with the person who said it's not going to work. And so that's why I always credit my mentors, because I always reached out to them in these kinds of situations and I said, hey, I don't know what to do because this person, and sometimes these people who are telling these things that it won't work are themselves at very high positions. So I would naturally tend to think, oh, if they're in this position, then I'm sure they know what they're talking about, which is exactly what we think, right? It's natural. But sometimes it's not about them not knowing what they're saying. It's that maybe they're not seeing something in the way that you are seeing. And just because someone is very experienced doesn't mean that they can see something in the way that you are seeing. And in that context, that makes their feedback not not relatable, right? Or not implementable, because they're not able to see the vision that you are seeing. So, and again, don't I always tell people, don't be blind. Don't be blind if if someone's giving you feedback and you just keep dismissing it, don't be dismissive either. And this is very hard, but you have to be really, really objective about feedback. And so, but the thing is, it doesn't matter if it's someone at your level, lesser than you or higher than you, giving you feedback. It's about the actual feedback. Is that feedback adding value to your life, to your growth, to your ideas, to your visions, whatever? And sometimes like if someone tells you that this idea doesn't have a lot of potential, it could be right. It could be right as well. But in that instant, I thought it was not, because I had I also realized that they weren't able to see this idea from the way I was seeing it. And I realized that they're not going to see it unless I actually build some more momentum on the idea itself. So, and again, they're not bad people or anything. They're just people who had different opinions than you had. And so again, coming back to the aspect of looking at who's giving you feedback, and looking at how much feedback do you take from people, how do you add filters to it. And this is also how people who are in the public eye, actors or just people who are influential in the world, you'll see that if they even post one picture on Instagram or on any social media sites, and if you read the comments, they're nasty comments, right? And you see how they don't get affected by it, but they'll kind of have like a PR team or some social media team that kind of looks at all the feedback and then distills it into feedback that the actor should actually work on, and stuff that the actor should just know. For example, that okay, this is what people are hating you for, and then that's something that maybe they can also work on, right? So like they will kind of summarize all the, like a lot of the comments, just the general public sentiment, because of course the fans and what the fans think are important generally, but they're not going to look at, the actor is not going to go and look at each comment, and then they're not going to like lose their mind over it, at least not most of them. And I still know that some people, and this is why not everyone can handle being a public figure, because they don't know how to take feedback, they don't know how to take comments, and they don't know how to look at it, how to separate themselves from the comments. And I'm not saying it's easy. I fully agree that it's really hard to be in the public eye and to be exposed to all kinds of comments and trolls and all of that. But again, it's a practice that we can all have, we can all create, by realizing that one, the feedback is not us, that is just comments, people's opinions, and people are entitled to have whatever opinion that they want to have. We can't stop that. But what we can control is our response to it, how we decide to respond to it. And for that, again, it comes back to how much we are taking care of our own mental health. Because if your mental health is not good and your physical health is not good, you're not going to be able to process any of this in the way that I'm telling you. Because there are times where I'm not able to implement my own advice because I'm not feeling mentally good. So please focus on any mental health practice like meditation or yoga or going out for a walk, or even just looking outside or writing in a journal about your feelings, what you feel every day, whatever practice it is. Just have something, or maybe you have a hobby that makes you feel happy, makes you feel grounded. If you don't have that, especially in your 20s, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have potentially depression, because you're going to be spiraling out of control because of what other people think about you, say about you, give feedback about you, right? Let's try to use feedback as a growth opportunity, as a learning opportunity. And if everything else fails, and if you're not able to see that feedback as a learning opportunity, I get that. And that's when you need to talk to your friends, to your parents. You know, our parents care a lot about us, and sometimes they may not be able to express it in the same ways that in ways that we would know. And even we don't want, sometimes it's very weird, right? Like to express feelings of emotion between parents and kids. And I get that. But just know that parents are there. Your parents are there for you. And if not, then go to your friends, and you can always reach out to me. I want to be this support system for you, so that you can reach out and you can you know either vent out or you can talk about it. So I'm also going to set up free 101 sessions so that you can directly speak with me. But right until then, if you feel alone, if you feel like you want to talk, you can always message me on LinkedIn, and I will always be there for you to respond back. You can always add your comments as well about how you feel. Maybe add that in the comments. How do you feel about feedback today? Because that your comment can help someone else with how they feel. Because when we feel that we are the only ones that feel a certain way, that's when we feel more isolated. We feel like we're the only ones that are going through this horrible feeling of receiving feedback. But when you know that you're not the only one, there's a whole community of people like you who feel the exact same way, then it feels less painful, right? One last thing I wanted to mention is, when you actually create a relationship of feedback, you actually are able to build stronger relationships at work because of that. And this I will cover in a networking and mentoring session. But literally the foundation of that is feedback. When you ask for feedback and when that feedback is given to you, that can be a strong foundation of a strong relationship that you can build with your coworkers at work. Feedback also gives you higher self-awareness. It makes you more self-aware of who you are, and it makes you it kind of empowers you. It can empower you if taken in the right way. It can also make you grow significantly in your career and in life if you really take the feedback that is given to you in a way that I mentioned earlier. And finally, it gives you a deeper sense of confidence when you take when you take feedback, but you also know that you're going to take it in a very grounded way, in a very confident way, and you're not going to react, but you're going to respond. That gives you a lot of self-confidence that, yes, I can take feedback, but I also know how to respond to that feedback. And that is what I want to equip you with today in this episode, by giving you all the tools and resources and the mindset, really, so that you can feel self-confident when you are given feedback, and to know that the feedback is not about you. So it should not shake your fundamental sense of confidence. And I'm not talking about the fake confidence where you just say, I know everything, I'm already everything. And no, this is not a motivational speech, right? But the real confidence that says, yes, I can learn, I'm capable of improving, and I'm open to receive feedback. And that is actually the mindset of leaders, of big thinkers, of CEOs, especially the good ones. If you talk to them, they will always have an open body language, and they will always have an open mind to receive any kind of feedback. And they will always say, oh, thank you, I really appreciate that, thank you for sharing, right? Very, very powerful. Having an open body language and an open mind, very important. And that is what will make you become a leader even in your 20s, a leader for yourself in your personal life, and also a leader in your professional life. And it's not like, because again, leader doesn't mean that you are, leading the biggest project in the company. A leader just means that you are someone who is able to be confident, and you're able to empower yourself with a growth mindset, and with a mindset which is curious and constructive. So the next time this feedback stings, right? Just pause and remember that this is not you. This is just something that is an external entity. It's something about your work or your contributions in the society, in your life, or in work, in your career, in your workplace. It has nothing to do about you as a person. It doesn't affect your value as a human being. We are all equal. You and I, we are equal. And my accomplishments, don't make me more than you, or my failures don't make me less than someone else. We are all the same, and everyone fails. Everyone gets feedback. Even the top CEOs of the world get, in fact, the most brutal feedback, because even one decision that they make can make or break sometimes companies themselves. And they, I'm sure, get a lot of negative press and feedback that they have to find a really constructive way to take. And that's why mental health, taking care of your mental health, finding practices that make you happy mentally, so that you can be in the right state of mind to incorporate all of this. If you are in a spiral, this is not going to work. You have to bring yourself to a centered, grounded place. So remember, feedback is not a judgment of who you are. It's an investment in who you are becoming. So depending on how you receive feedback, you will grow that exact amount. The way you receive feedback is directly proportional to your career growth and your growth in life. So hopefully this was a great session for you, and hopefully you learned how to receive feedback. But if you have any comments, if you have any questions, if you want me to stress on a specific aspect of what we talked about, please let me know in the comments, and I will see you again in our next episode on our IQ Tuesdays. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, stay healthy, and be brave. You got this. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.